Welcome to One Man's Tracks, the second-hand music channel. Today I've got a lovely little alternative rock outfit out of Halifax, Nova Scotia to discuss with you today. This band formed in the early 90s, originally called Sandbox Legacy, and made up of vocalist and nephew of the great Anne Murray, Paul Murray, guitarist Jason Archibald and Mike Smith, bassist Scott McFarlane, and drummer Troy Shanks. You might recognize the name Mike Smith if you're a big fan of the Trailer Park Boys, because this was Bubbles' band before he met up with Ricky and Julian and got off to some other antics. Him and Jason Archibald were the main songwriters for Sandbox, and they'd already dropped the legacy portion of their name by the time they released their independent EP, Maskmen, in 1993. That EP contained what would go on to become their band's biggest hit, Curious, and it was a song that was just written the day before they went in and started recording. Something off that EP caught the attention of somebody at Latitude Records, and they'd get to record their full-length debut. This is that album, released in Canada in 1995 and then later released in the States the year after through Network Records. Co-produced by the band and William O'Guru. This is Sandbox's Bionic. Being a band with two guitars, you might come to expect a loud guitar-based sound, but they have much more focus on melody, and it lends the guitars to be more of a guiding, complementary force to the vocals that are right up front, that can shift this alternative, almost independent rock sound that they have towards something more poppy, with some really catchy sing-along hooks and choruses popping up all over this project. Their vulnerable, harmonic delivery isn't all too unique when compared to bands like R.E.M. or even big Canadian groups like the Tragically Hip or the Bare Naked Ladies, but those bands seem to slip a little closer to pop, and these guys managed to maintain their honest, hard-working East Coast edge, and they brought their hardy asses across the whole country in tents to support this album. Bionic is a pleasant and thoughtful alt-rock LP with some creative vocal mixing and some consistent flow. It's not going to blow anyone's minds, but it's an album that each time I put it on, I'll listen to it all the way through. Do you guys remember Sandbox? Tell me more about them down in the comments. Are you a bigger fan of Mike Smith's music or his acting? In the meantime, I'm going to be throwing on my own little bottle glasses to take a closer look at the track list on this. That starts out pretty much the same way as the EP does, just with a little 15-second fanfare intro before it. You get that top 10 alternative rock hit, for Canadian charts at least, Curious. And I wonder where you are, curious. You may have heard this track or the following track, Collide, on MTV. They both had music videos made for them that got some decent rotation there. Collide sounds like it's built off of a similar riff to American Woman, and both those songs, as well as the next track, For You, are all real catchy, well-written, low-key rock jams that really do well to elevate the listener and set the tone for the record. After those first few, the light-hearted groove remains thoughtful but shifts in tone with decisions being more urgent, more uncertain. It seems to be about the struggle to resist the temptations of addiction. It's just another solid emotional piece that further fortifies the front half of this album. Then Grief does well to build up to its resistant, grungy choruses, but ultimately this track does feel too soft and clean to really have that dig in and stick around ability. Now for an absolutely lovely and gripping ballad co-written by Smith and Nicole Frost titled Three Balloons and a Trapdoor. I couldn't find out who was responsible for the bowed instrumentation on this one, but oh boy, it was just what this beauty needed. One last track on this album got a music video. It's titled Here and There, and it sees a bit of a return to that poppy alternative rock sound from the beginning of the album. One major thing that keeps their songs from having that strictly pop or pop rock definition beyond the maybe a little bit softer and slower approach they have is their lyrics tell an actual story instead of just hitting you over the head again and again with just this one cleverly worded anecdote that pop labels just seem to eat right up. Nearly every one of these songs has a memorable melodic chorus, but they also tend to tackle some pretty difficult themes, like on the track Live, which feels like a battle with depression, then a resetting, and then feeling like you can hold on to life again. Just a full arc of a song. Or similarly with the song Flux, a more cryptic track that has some of my favorite drumming on the whole LP. It seems to be about the difficulty of change, or maybe the challenge that is taking the higher road when more easy routes are available. Envisioning and pushing towards the future seems to be a common theme that reoccurs on Bionic here. We get Weatherman next, which is a super Canadian sounding song. It's just a short, pleasant, sort of droning acoustic cut that's followed up by another track that just keeps bringing it home with the nostalgic feel-good vibes. That one's called Luster. The closing number, And the Mood Changes, is super well produced, relatively ambitious, and just nice and emotive, as is par for this excellent alternative rock course. After 3 minutes of silence at the end of that song, you get this deep, distorted vocal that leads you to an interesting little bonus track if you're patient. And the Mood Changes is a song that was actually designed to flow right into the opening track of their 1997 follow-up album, A Murder in the Glee Club. That would end up being the band's last album, as that quasi-concept album sort of flopped and the EMI label dropped the band. I'm not entirely sure if that's what led to the band breaking up, but in a few years Mike would have the opportunity to film a TV show, and I'm certain that was going to be taking up more than enough of his time. Smith was longtime friends with eventual Trailer Park Boys director Mike Clattenburg, and he'd already worked with Rob Wells and Jean-Paul Tremblay, Ricky and Julian, on a short sketch in 1995 called Cartboy, and so the beginnings were already there. If you want to see a sort of quasi-origin story, I've linked that as well. Any Trailer Park Boys fans ought to take the 10 minutes after listening to Sandbox a little bit. Once again, leave me a Bionic comment, or maybe just tell me your favorite Bubbles quote down there. Like the video, subscribe for next week's throwback album review, weekly retrospectives coming at ya, baby! Woo! There's a couple on the screen here that you might enjoy based on that album, but if they're not of your liking, how about you just fuck right off now and go get yourself some liquor and whore?